Professor Syed Iftekhar, and he's a colleague of mine at Griffith University, and he'll be talking about the whole of system economics and generally how it's mentioned a couple of times today, the technology is great, but is it financially viable, and what other factors do we need to consider for making this a feasible project? So, all yours, Syed. Thank you.
Thank you, Kara, and welcome everyone. Right before the morning tea, so I'm quite conscious that you might be feeling hungry and a bit tired. Okay, so let's get going. So today I'm going to talk about one component of the whole project, which is looking at how do we evaluate, how do we develop a value proposition and business case for these kind of technologies and products and systems. So if you have seen the nice brochure, you have seen a picture like this where we are trying to capture the circularity or the flow of systems and products from one system to another. And then what we have here is that we have urine diverting technologies and products, right? And what ultimately, and already Abraham has in his very nice talk, he has outlined quite a number of benefits, as well as Stefano and Bejar. So what we can see from here is that we have major types of benefits, for example, reduced leaching and runoff, which has an impact on the environment. And as well as we start to producing or expecting the fertilizers, and that also has an impact on the productivity in terms of agriculture and food production. Where we are coming from here is that there is an additional benefit, which is around the sustainability, security, water security, and people security concern. And that's where we have these other broader type of objectives. So the question or challenge for our small team is that how do we bring all these things together, especially when we try to convey the business case or the value of this kind of investing in these kind of projects. The challenge here is that when we are talking about environmental benefits, we have lots of non-market intangible benefits where these are quite highly in abstract sense, and we talk, people understand, but we cannot show it on a paper, right? So that's a challenge. Okay, then other thing is that when you're talking about food and fertilizer, yes, we have some market benefit. We can look at fertilizer price and then, okay, this is the kind of approximate benefit. But then how do we capture the sustainability concerns, for example, in a business case or in dollar values, which probably will be more convincing to decision makers? Because ultimately what we want to show is that whether it's economically, financially, socially viable or not, because that's ultimately our decision makers want to know, because that's where they invest, whether it's worthwhile to invest in this project or this type of projects or not. So we have two broad objectives within the component within this project. One is the demand and value assessment, and we will particularly focus on non-market value part, because that's where there is very limited information to understand people's preferences and values of these type of systems. And then we also develop business cases, especially for the selected case studies, based on the available data, to see at least that when you develop a formal, put everything in a formal cost-benefit analysis, whether it stacks up or not. And if it's not, or if it is, then what are the sensitive parameters that we need to be more aware of. So given these broad two objectives, what we can think of is that a kind of a cost-benefit analysis framework, which is a very standardized method with standardized technique. People, regulators love it, they use it. Even if they do not use it, they talk about it, okay? So that's quite important for us to consider. So usually when we have this kind of cost-benefit analysis framework, we have to start with and without the project, right? So without what is going to happen if it's a baseline status quo scenario versus if we have these kind of technologies in place. So the kind of information that we will need as part of our project as well is to understand the physical impacts, right? The physical benefits of these kind of projects, which already Stefan and others, they have shown some from their pilot case studies and experiments. So when you talk about physical changes, we also have to consider who are the relevant stakeholders, who are going to get benefit from it, right? And then on the other hand, we have to actually invest in this project, install this project, so that means there are activities, physical inputs, and that would require current and future work. One thing I pretty much like from Abraham's talk is that when he was highlighting the adaptation options, the community acceptance, and that's actually a critical element of this whole project, because we already have seen with wastewater here is that yuck factor, right? So you could already know that. So this is going to be also an issue in our case. So we have to think of the adaptations, and risk, as well as who are the relevant stakeholders, right? Who is going to share the benefits, who is going to share the cost. So all these things we have to consider as part of our overall business case or economic analysis. So the challenging part is to evaluate and calculate the non-market values of these aspects. So that's why we have an emphasis on the non-market part. But cost and the market aspect, they are also equally important. So we cannot ignore them. So we do put them together, and that ultimately gives us an indication of the overall economic efficiency, which includes the net benefit cost ratios. And we also would look at stakeholder level efficiency analysis, for example, stakeholder level net benefits and cost benefit cost ratios, as well as I have said, the sensitivity analysis part, right? So which assumptions influences our decisions. So that's the broad thing. That's what we will hope to produce as we go along through the project, as we develop our case studies and get more and more data. So one thing we already have more or less completed is a GAM, who is a PhD student. If you could please raise your hand. So she already has done a systematic literature review on the kind of papers which have conducted some sort of economic or financial analysis of these systems. And so from her findings, and she has a poster which she will be presenting during the conferences, but please feel free to talk to her. One of the things that we were interested to know that what's the overall understanding of these different factors and what drives supply, demand, and economic feasibility of these products and technologies. Okay, and then we are particularly interested to know what people have found or reported in terms of economic feasibility or economic performance. So through the systematic literature review, actually ultimately we were able to find only around 64 studies. So there are not many studies which have reported or looked into this aspect, which is a good thing for us as well as a bit scary, right? So if there is not much information, why not? Anyway, so what basically we can summarize and is that it's like more or less it's driven from experimental approach. In some sense, it's like the supply side, that where people are like researchers and other entrepreneurs, they are interested in the technical feasibility and performance of these kind of systems. So it's like an experimentation stage. So then we have to bring in the regulations, especially if we want to have pilots, if we want to go for demonstration site, etc. And ultimately, when you go to the commercialization stage, then we have to talk about financial benefits to the proponents or to the businesses. So then we have to look at the other side, which is the demand side. Okay, so in the demand side, there have been some studies which they have looked at in particular in a hypothetical stage, like okay, whether in some cases they also looked at real case studies. What they have found is the community attitude and social acceptance is a big factor, right? And as I mentioned, in Australia we are familiar with this. Cost savings, or whether it's actually beneficial to the household or beneficial to the businesses, that also have come up as a quite important factor. And finally, how well the system is performing, especially in relation to the environmental performance. That has come up as a factor. So overall, we are interested to look in this systematic review is what factors influence both supply and the demand side of these systems, and whether does it influence, and what do we know about the economic performance of these systems. Unfortunately, out of 64, only 18 have reported some kind of economic analysis. In many cases, they have reported payment period. Some cases, they have reported just the cost of achieving a target. What we are trying to achieve here is that comprehensive cost-benefit analysis, or which allow us to understand the net benefit of these projects. That's actually pretty rare. Okay, and the results are quite mixed. And what we have found is that incorporating the non-market or the dollar values of the environmental concerns is a significant factor in tilting the curve. So I think we are in a nice space, good space, unlike nice and nice. But because we have a dedicated objective of evaluating these non-market values part. So hopefully we'll get some good outcomes. But that's it for the moment. So we are in the data collection and desktop synthesis. So we'll start with, after passing the systematic review, we'll start looking at the market data and start looking at desktop analysis. And there you'll hear from us regarding organizing workshops and to get the data, whatever you have, and then finally we'll design non-market surveys to get primary data. Thank you very much.
very much, Simon. Very nice time.
Yeah, so we're actually, we're now ahead. Well, morning tea is until 11:30 and it's 10 past, so we do have some time for questions for all three of the presenters.